They're full-on vampires. They love the taste of human flesh and they drink human blood.
She said it out loud years ago, and everybody laughed.
Everything else I've said has come true after everybody said I was crazy.
They called her unstable. They canceled her show. They took everything she built over 30 years in a single afternoon. But now the Epstein files are open. The flight logs are public. The names are circulating. And Roseanne Barr is the one person who had every single one of those names, years before anyone else dared to say them out loud.
I think it goes to the royals of the world, the kings and queens. That's how they get there.
Kings, queens, Hollywood royalty, and according to Roseanne, buys private dinners that nobody is supposed to know about. But here's what nobody is connecting. The warning she's issuing right now isn't just about what happened on Epstein's island, it's about what happened before the island, at the tables, behind closed doors, at parties where the guest list was never meant to go public. This is that story. Before we get into the names, and we are absolutely getting into the names, you need to understand something about Roseanne Barr that most people have completely forgotten. This woman was not some outsider throwing rocks at Hollywood from a distance. She was Hollywood. She built one of the most watched television shows in American history from the ground up. A working-class family on primetime network TV that didn't look like the polished fantasy everyone else was selling. She fought her own network for creative credit. She fought her head writers. She fought the system at every level. And she won. That matters. Because when someone like that starts telling you what she saw at those parties, you're not getting a rumor. You're getting a first-hand account from someone who sat at those tables.
Hollywood ain't shit but pedos. And people under pedo control with their handlers.
Now, that's not a metaphor. That's not hyperbole. That is a woman who spent decades inside the most powerful entertainment machine on the planet, telling you exactly what she witnessed. And the part that should shake you, the part that the mainstream media never wants to discuss, is that Roseanne has been saying this since long before the Epstein files became dinner table conversation. She wasn't chasing a trend. She was sounding an alarm. And the response she got was immediate and total destruction.
After they kicked me off TV and said I was a threat to America and everything.
They called you a threat to America?
Well, something like that. A threat to Hollywood.
A threat to everything's a threat to Hollywood right now. Hollywood
Ain't it?
seems to be crumbling at the foundations.
Isn't it great?
A threat to Hollywood. Sit with that for a second. Not a threat to decency, not a threat to public safety, a threat to Hollywood. And in 2018, Hollywood made sure she understood exactly what that designation meant. Here's the thing about Roseanne's warnings that cuts through all the noise. She doesn't deal in vague accusations. She deals in specifics. And the most specific and most disturbing account she has given publicly is one that she shared in a sit-down interview that most people have never seen in full. She's talking about the last Hollywood party she ever attended. The last one. The one that made her pack her bags and move to Hawaii.
In comes a big movie star, and with him, his date, who was a 12-year-old boy.
A 12-year-old boy brought as a date by an A-list movie star to a room full of Hollywood's biggest names. And what happened in that room? Nothing. Nobody said a word. Nobody called anyone. Nobody stood up. The most famous, most powerful, most celebrated people in American entertainment sat in their corners and pretended not to notice.
Lord, help me find my keys and get to my car. I had been drinking, like always. But I go, Lord, help me get my keys and get to my car and get the holy hell out of here and make it home safely. Please, Lord. And I ran for my life. And that was the last time, Benny.
She ran. She literally ran. The Queen of Hollywood. A woman who had taken on ABC executives, network suits, and the entire establishment, was so frightened by what she saw that night that she couldn't get out fast enough. And then she moved to an island, not metaphorically. She moved to Hawaii because she needed to put an ocean between herself and what was happening in those rooms.
I moved to Hawaii. Couldn't be there 1 second longer than I had to.
Now here's where the dinner angle gets critical, because what Roseanne is describing, well, this culture of powerful men bringing minors to elite gatherings, of a room full of celebrities who see it and say absolutely nothing, that is not a party. That is a system. That is how a network maintains itself. You bring people into a room. You let them witness something, and now they're in it with you. Whether they spoke up or not, whether they participated or not, their silence is the currency. This is the dinner nobody talks about, not the ones photographed for tabloids. The other ones, the ones where the guest list tells you everything you need to know about who is protected and why. To understand why Roseanne's warning is so significant right now, you need to understand what Epstein was actually running. And it was not what the mainstream media spent years telling you it was. The media version, a creepy billionaire with a thing for young girls, who somehow slipped through the cracks of the justice system for years before finally getting caught. A bad apple, an isolated predator, an anomaly.
I acquired his little black book, and then I started calling victims in the black book. And they started telling me about being flown around and flown to an island. And at that point, I realized he was no longer a lone pedophile, but he ran a pedophile network.
A network, not a lone actor. A network. And networks have infrastructure. They have logistics. They have venues. They have gatherings. Here is what the investigators who actually spent years inside these files have described. Epstein's operation was fundamentally about leverage. He wasn't just providing access. He was documenting it. Cameras, witnesses, evidence, his job. And according to those who've studied this extensively, he absolutely had a job. He had a function within a larger structure, was to get powerful people into compromising situations and then own them forever.
The structure of Hollywood is if there is sort of pressure to do sort of things or they have blackmail, there is a payoff. It's not like you're blackmailed and you're living in a hut. Like, you'll rise to the top, you'll have money.
Well, if you don't, you'll be finished.
Rise to the top or be finished. Those are the only two options this system offers. And when you frame it like that, when you understand that the price of the penthouse is permanent silence, suddenly the behavior of dozens of Hollywood's most celebrated names starts making a different kind of sense. The ones who never speak out, the ones who show up at the right events, smile for the right cameras, support the right causes, the ones who, when something dark surfaces in their circle, say absolutely nothing and wait for it to pass. Roseanne has a name for those people. She's been calling them out for years, and now, with the files open and the names circulating, her warning is getting a whole new audience. Let's talk about the names, because Roseanne has never been subtle about this. She has, on multiple occasions, on multiple platforms, named specific individuals she believes are connected to this network, and the names she keeps returning to are not obscure figures. These are people you know, people whose faces are on billboards, whose names are on production credits, whose charitable foundations have received billions of dollars in public goodwill.
I called her up and I said, just like this, you better shut your blanking mouth about me.
That was Roseanne, on the record, describing a direct phone call she placed to one of Hollywood's most untouchable figures. That's not rumor. That's not speculation. That is someone who knows exactly what she knows, calling someone who knows exactly what they know, and making sure both parties understand the stakes. The names that Roseanne has publicly connected to this network include figures at the absolute apex of entertainment and global influence. Oprah Winfrey, Tom Hanks, Lady Gaga, Bill Gates, Ellen DeGeneres. These are names she has brought up in multiple interviews, on her own podcast, in public appearances, not whispered, stated. Now, and this is important, Roseanne is not presenting courtroom evidence. She is doing something that, in many ways, is more powerful. She is connecting dots that the mainstream media has deliberately refused to connect. She is asking the questions that the people running those networks do not want asked, and she is doing it with the credibility of someone who was physically present in those rooms.
I think it goes to the royals of the world, the kings and queens. That's how they get there. Come on.
Kings and queens. That's the ceiling of this network, according to Roseanne. Not Hollywood producers, not studio executives, not even the biggest names in entertainment. The people she's pointing to operate at a level above all of that. And the dinners, the private gatherings, the closed-door events, the parties where a 12-year-old boy can walk in as someone's date and nobody blinks. Those are the rituals that bind this level of power together. Who knows what exactly happens at those tables? The official story is that these are just wealthy people socializing, fundraisers, networking, private parties for the elite. What people are saying, what Roseanne has been saying for years, is something else entirely. You decide. Of all the names on Roseanne's list, there is one that she keeps returning to with a particular intensity, and that is Ellen DeGeneres. Not because Ellen is necessarily the most powerful figure in this network, but because Ellen represents something specific, the public face of the machine. Think about what Ellen's brand was built on: kindness, warmth, inclusion, dancing with guests, giving cars away, being America's living room. And for nearly 2 decades, that brand worked perfectly because it kept the public exactly where the network needed them. Entertained, comfortable, not asking questions.
Oh yeah, I got kicked out of show business.
She said it herself, laughing about it, framing it as a punchline about being a difficult boss. But here is what doesn't add up. Hollywood is full of difficult bosses. Harvey Weinstein terrorized people for decades and kept his job. Countless executives and showrunners are notorious for abuse behavior, and they work constantly. Mean people do not lose their shows in Hollywood. That is not how this industry works. What Roseanne has been arguing, and what the timeline actually supports, is that Ellen's exit was a controlled demolition, a manufactured crisis designed to give her a soft landing while the real reasons for her removal stayed buried. Let the public think she was just a bad boss. Let them feel mildly disappointed. Close the show quietly. Move on.
This is Satan's army. Like, literally, this is Satan's army.
Now, Roseanne uses language that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Vampires, devil devil worshippers, Satan's army. And look, whether you take those terms literally, spiritually, or metaphorically, the underlying point she's making is consistent. This is not a group of disconnected individuals doing bad things independently. This is a structured network with rules, hierarchies, and methods of control that have been operating for a very long time. And that network, according to Roseanne, decides who rises and who falls. It decided that Ellen's daytime career was expendable if sacrificing it meant the real story stayed hidden. It decided that Roseanne's entire legacy was worth destroying if it meant silencing someone who had actually been in those rooms. Here is what makes this moment different from every other moment Roseanne has spoken out. For years, when she said these things, she was alone. She was the crazy one. She was the cautionary tale. Look what happens when you go too far, when you say too much, when you can't keep your mouth shut. The system used her as a warning to everyone else watching.
You know what they say, you can't wake people up that are pretending to be asleep, but I pray to God, please wake up.
But something has shifted. The Epstein files, the ones that every serious journalist, every concerned parent, every person who asked questions was told were crazy conspiracy theories, are open. The names on the flight logs are being cross-referenced with the names on the party lists. The guest lists from those private gatherings are being compared to the public statements those same people made about Epstein when he was arrested. And here is what Roseanne keeps pressing on, and what her warning is really about. The dinners are the key, not the island. Everyone is focused on the island. The island was the result of a system that was built over years, at tables, in private homes, at events that the public was never supposed to know about. The island was just where the leverage was executed. The groundwork was laid at the dinners.
You know, everything is a mind trick to get us to kill ourselves and each other, isn't it?
Mind tricks. That is the operating principle. Keep the public arguing about things that don't matter. Keep them distracted with manufactured culture war moments. Keep the celebrities smiling and dancing on daytime television. Keep the journalists chasing stories that never quite reach the top of the pyramid. And when anyone gets close to naming the actual names, destroy them fast, completely. Make an example. Let everyone in the industry see what happens to an uncontrolled threat. That was Roseanne's cancellation. That is what the tweet was. It wasn't about the content of the tweet. It was about the timing. She was connecting too many dots too publicly on a platform that reached tens of millions of people every single week. So the machine waited for a single misstep and moved with a speed that should have told everyone everything they needed to know.
As soon as they heard that, you know, a lot of cabals here in Hollywood, that's all they needed to hear. It's
Well,
like,
people are
okay,
crazy.
destroy. She must be destroyed.
She must be destroyed. Those were the words. Not addressed, not corrected, not given a second chance. Destroyed. And look at the contrast. The people on Roseanne's list, the names she's been calling out for years, kept their careers, kept their production deals, kept their foundations, kept their seats at the tables where the real decisions get made. While the woman who told you what she saw at those tables lost her show, her character, her legacy, and her reputation inside of 24 hours. Now the files are open. The names are surfacing. And the question Roseanne has been asking since before most people even knew who Jeffrey Epstein was is finally getting the hearing it deserved. The warning Roseanne Barr is issuing isn't new. She has been issuing it for years. What's new is that the world is finally in a position to hear it. Every name she connected to Epstein's network, every dinner she alluded to, every gathering she described, where powerful people sat in corners and said nothing while something unforgivable happened in the same room, is now sitting in a pile of documents that investigators, journalists, and regular people are finally being allowed to examine. The official story was that Epstein was a lone predator. What people are saying, and what the evidence increasingly suggests, is that he was a node in a network that ran on silence, leverage, and private rooms where the rules that apply to everyone else simply did not apply. Roseanne saw that network from the inside. She walked away from it. She warned anyone who would listen, and she paid the full price for doing it, whether every specific claim she makes is verifiable or not. The pattern she's describing, the structure, the dinner culture of the elite that kept all of this invisible, that part is looking less and less like conspiracy, and more like the story the whole world is just now catching up to. Make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting started.